So my husband and I put up a fence maybe a month ago, a couple weeks ago, but our gate system didn't work out so well. So right now we have this very sophisticated extra piece of fencing that I'm using just to keep the chickens out and the dogs out so they don't go ham on my garden. Yeah, but it works well for right now until we can get a actual fence going. So let's walk in. I do a lot of no-till. I primarily do no-till. There's a ton of different ways that you can do no-till. I'm not going to go into all of those here. I may do a different video on that, just going through the different no-till practices and that sort of thing. But for me, what I initially did is threw down some cardboard. So the ring, like the U, is the first part of the garden, and then this part on the inside, that's all new to this year. But essentially all I did was throw down some cardboard, threw down some sticks, made a bit of a mound, threw down some more soil and then compost, and then put hay on top of that. Hay is what we have. We are hay farmers, so hay, I get that for free. Most people do use straw because it doesn't have the hay seeds in it. However, because we are hay farmers, I have the opportunity to get hay that is from last season, so all of the seeds are pretty much done for, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. The hay locks in. It's really important to keep your soil covered. The hay is what locks in the moisture and keeps the soil and everything where it's supposed to be if we get heavy rain. I also opted to do more of a mound system just because this area does get fairly wet. And it just made more sense to have more of a mound system. That way I can keep my crops elevated. It's not a perfect system that I have done. Other people have done this much better than I have. I'm very much a let's throw it down on the ground and see what we can grow chaos organizer or coordinator. But there's lots of different ways that you can do this system. So let me just show you what I have done and what I have planted. There's part of the section where I'm starting to layer cardboard. This will have some soil on it later, as well as some compost, and I plan on growing something there. I'm not sure yet. This was all covered with wild lettuce that I had actually harvested for medicinal purposes. The wild lettuce is gone now, and I've replanted them with some pollinator plants and then added this birdhouse. Pollinator plants are super important for attracting, obviously, our pollinators, but I keep birdhouses in my garden because birds also help with pest management and pest control. And I actually don't like to use a whole lot of herbicides or pesticides in my garden. I think the most that I have really done is slug traps with beer and then diatomaceous earth on things, but I really don't like using anything on my garden. Excuse me. And the birds are a huge ally in helping me be able to maintain this natural balance with keeping my garden pretty much pesticide free. I've lost a few plants, but I really haven't lost a ton of plants to pesticide or to bugs. My okra didn't do very well this season. I planted them, but then they didn't really pop up. So this is a second planting. I have 1, 2, 3 plants popping up right now. They're looking okay. Let me see. They're looking okay. This one looks pretty good. Everybody's looking fine in that area. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll get some okra before the season's over. It is July, but we're in zone 6, so we still have some time for planting or for crops to come up. I'm pretty proud of this asparagus section. I planted the asparagus by seed not too long ago, a year and a half ago. So I have another year and a half left before I get like a good first harvest. But it's looking really good. It's looking pretty healthy. The plan is to have it so it's all along this row right here. I want to extend it further back. I did plant some more seeds, so this is more of a long-term goal. This isn't, I'm going to get asparagus next year. But I've planted it to where it's going to go all the way back towards, there's a pathway back there, but towards the end of this pathway, that way we have a big asparagus section. I honestly don't spend a lot of time weeding around my garden. I will do this when I flip beds and that sort of stuff, but for the most part, the hay does a really good job of squishing out any kind of plants that I don't necessarily want. However, everything that you see here are plants that I manage. I don't pull them up or anything like that. They're just plants that I manage. They're not causing any kind of issue. They're not squishing out any of my crop plants. And because they're weeds, and a lot of them have long tap roots like this dandelion here, they're actually helping me bring up nutrients from deep in the soil and bringing it up to my beds. At the end of the season, all of this is going to get squished out anyway. By squished out, I mean like smothered with hay and other things when I flip my beds and amend the soil again after the growing season. But I keep it. It's less work for me. I am not out here weeding every day. The bees seem to love it, and it hasn't caused any kind of issues. So this is Pepper Way. I have all of these pepper plants that are growing through here. They're all a little small because I did plant a bunch of stuff late. I had planned on growing a lot of my stuff from seed this year, and I got the seeds germinated, I got the seeds going, but then I lost my greenhouses that I was using for seed starting 3 times due to like the wacky weather that we had in Indiana earlier this year. So I had to buy my peppers. No big deal. I bought my peppers from local growers and our local FFA to support our kids at the high school level. These peppers seem to be doing okay. I did have my soil tested earlier this year and I had some nitrogen issues. So I've interplanted beans throughout here. The beans haven't popped up yet, but I've interplanted beans everywhere, trying to amend the soil with some nitrogen naturally. I think that's why these are not growing as fast. So in between the fish emulsion that I'm using for fertilizing and the beans that should be coming up here soon, I'm hoping that it'll give these peppers a little bit more of a boost. We'll do some more at the end of the season. And I'll share that journey with you of what I'm doing. But for right now, we're just adding various plants and then that fish emulsion to take care of the nitrogen problem. This is curly dock. I have curly dock that I'm just allowing to grow pretty much all over the farm. Curly dock is a weed, but it has medicinal purposes. It can be used as an herb. And then these wonderful little seed pods here. I don't know if you can see them. These wonderful little seed pods here. they actually can be used as a flower substitute, or well, just a different kind of flower. So my plan is, I do have this all over the farm. My plan is to harvest these, use the seeds to mill my own flour in my grain mill, and try that for some seasonal cooking this year. Got some more peppers. Peppers are doing okay. They're doing better on this end than they are on the other end, and that's okay. Got some little cayenne peppers coming out. Back here I have some tomatoes that were self-sowed. These were all volunteer tomato plants. I had tomatoes planted here last year, and honestly at the end of the season I just left everything and then covered it with hay and some compost, that kind of stuff. I didn't expect the tomatoes to germinate themselves and actually pop up. They did, and I currently have a whole row, so there's like another one back there. I have a whole row of just volunteer tomato plants over here. So my goal at the end of the season is to do the same thing. Any kind of tomatoes that I get that maybe I don't want to eat, or it's at the end of the season, or they fall off or whatever, I'm going to throw them up against this wall here, this area of the fence here, and try to grow some volunteer tomatoes on that end of the fence and use the fence as like a trellising system. These are the greenhouses that I lost earlier this year. They're a little broken, but still standing. I've got them tied up to the fence, and so far they've done okay. I'm using them as tool storage right now, but in the wintertime I'll be overwintering a couple of my pepper plants in there. I want to do some experiments with overwintering pepper plants in my greenhouses compared to overwintering them in the basement. Peppers are perennials, so that's like something you can do. I have not been successful with it so far though. So my garden style here is a little bit more like a crazy, chaotic English garden style. I promise when things start to grow and flower out and get bigger, it's going to look nicer. Everything in this middle section is like super, super new as of this year, so it hasn't really had that chance. And I kind of leave these beds open for more veggie crops to support my family. However, in the corner of the garden, I like to plant some perennial pollinators. I have got those all through here. That's what those are. And then I got really lucky that we live in between two fields and we have these wonderful red clovers. And I leave this section here for the bees, but I do harvest these red clovers for herbal purposes and that sort of thing. And then down here I have a volunteer marigold from earlier this season. It's good for the pollinators. Again, some of these are trap crops where the bugs, they either prevent bugs from happening or the bugs go and eat them. Either way, they're not eating my produce, which is wonderful. So I highly recommend having messy places in your garden like this that give the bugs and the wildlife and that sort of thing like a chance to enjoy your garden as well, because you're building a living ecosystem. And in order to do that, like, you really do need to support everybody who lives here. I have some basil in here that looks like it might need, I just trimmed it. Give it another week before I trim it again. Here I have, and I have these scattered throughout the garden, are little compost bins. The bottoms are cut off, and then I open up the lids and I throw our kitchen waste in there that the chickens cannot eat. So things like potatoes or onions or junk food that I wouldn't want the chickens to eat, tea bags, that sort of thing. I will throw those in here along with some organic matter like green matter, brown matter, and let that break down. It feeds our worms. We have a ton of earthworms throughout the garden, and I really do think it's because we have these miniature compost areas in the garden. All right, so here I planted a lot of beans in this section. I had corn here last year, and I really wanted to make sure that I added beans to this section for my crop rotation, just to add some more back to the soil. It's a perk if I get beans from these this year, which I have. Yeah, we have had some bug issues, but for the most part, the beans are doing pretty well. I can't complain. Everybody's looking pretty, pretty healthy for the most part over here on this side. And the beans are serving more than one purpose. We're not only getting some yummy goodness out of them, but they are amending our soil and our nitrogen level. Now at the end of the season, I don't pull any of these things out. What I do, and this is part of my continuously creating like a mound system, is I will cut the plants off at, I don't know if you can see it, like I'll cut the plants off at the base of the plant, and this will all go towards, the top part will go towards compost if I need it. But for the most part, I leave everything here and I just cover it back up with more manure, and then I add hay on top and let that sit and bake for the off season. We've had good luck with that. It also keeps my mounds growing, and I don't know, it's worked for us. Some more weeds, because I don't weed, and I'm not going to. I'll fix all of this at the end of the season. If this gets too big, I just weed eat over it. Like I don't care. It's not worth it for me to do a whole lot of weeding in the summertime. Not only does it hurt my lungs because I do have asthma, it's just way too hot, and it's a lot of extra work that I'm not willing to put into a garden. And the methods that we seem to be doing, like there's no weeds in there. So the smothering method, the deep mulch method seems to be working really well for us. This is Potato Hill, or at least it was a hill until recently, and now it's less of a hill. All of these potatoes are potatoes that we had purchased from the grocery store. I actually didn't buy any seed potatoes this year. Yeah, I didn't buy any seed potatoes this year. I got everything from potatoes that had sprouted in our pantry from the grocery store. They are all doing really, really well. As a matter of fact, I harvested one of the earlier ones earlier this week, and I got a nice fist-sized potato. It made me super happy. But they're doing really well. I'm actually surprised. This was not supposed to happen. I planted these on a whim, and they surprised me. So I'm letting them go. When they kind of go yellow and flop over, that's when I know that it's time for me to harvest them. But till then, we're just gonna leave them and let them do their thing. I did plant a lot of my sunflower seeds got taken this year from the chickens and other birds. So I planted them on the inside of the fence, and that actually helped a lot with maintaining seeds. Go figure, a fence would keep the chickens out. And so I'm gonna have like a really nice row of sunflowers here later this season. Everybody's looking really good. Again, can't complain. Beans. So again, we have beans literally everywhere. Beans are it. Beans are what we're doing because, again, we've got that nitrogen issue, and I'm just trying to get as much nitrogen in here as possible. These beans were actually gifted to me from a woman whose grandmother had passed away, and she had a bunch of these in her freezer. I didn't think that these were even going to sprout. They surprised me, and look at them go. I don't have any beans on them yet, but they're growing. They look great. Some more beans, beans, beans. I think all of these are Blue Lake pole beans. Here's my butternut squash section. So the goal is to have the butternut squash climb this janky trellis that I created with just stuff from the farm. It looks bad, but it will serve a purpose. And then that way I can get my butternut squash off of the ground and prevent any kind of like disease or pests or anything like that. And also save space in my garden so I don't have just squash everywhere. Yeah, all right. So now we're gonna head towards Tomato Alley. So we backtrack a little bit back to the beans. You can see I have intermingled in between the beans, lots of tomatoes. I did start my tomatoes a little bit later this year, again, because I lost my greenhouse. It was all very tragic. And I purchased many of my tomatoes from local growers or the FFA. The tomatoes that I have now, they seem to be doing well. I need to come out and trim them a little bit today. I don't like it when my tomato branches are hitting the ground. This is more of an opportunity for a pest or something to crawl up here and get into my tomatoes and cause a blight issue. I do have a little bit of an issue with leaf curl, but I haven't had any, like it really hasn't caused any problems. So I think this was from earlier this year of not having enough nitrogen, and then it got really hot and then it rained a whole bunch. But it's not caused a problem. It's not something for me to be worried about right now. Everybody seems to be producing really well. We've got baby tomatoes starting to pop up. Got little tomato flowers coming up. This is the ideal of, and this tomato plant I'm kind of indoctoring up because it did have some of that leaf curl at the beginning of the season. But this is the ideal of what I like to do with my tomato plants, is grow them more like a tree. This provides like a ton of airflow. It keeps the plants pretty healthy because there's more airflow. There's not a whole lot of dampness in here, and it just gives less of an opportunity for pests and disease to get in. I'll chop everything off on like that bottom like 6 to 12 inches or so, and then manage the rest of it so it's not like I'll take out the suckers or whatever. Like this is a sucker right here, anything in between, and I'll just knock those out. And that keeps it, you know, pretty managed, pretty well maintained. I've got these clips from Amazon. They're reusable. They are amazing. This is actually 2 of the clips put together. I will link that in the notes below if I remember. If I don't, you can just ask me. Got little baby tomatoes. Guys, I'm just thrilled that I have tomatoes at all. I was very unsure about all of it this year. This year was harder than years in the past. I don't understand necessarily why. I don't know if I just wasn't in like the right headspace, or if it was the weather, or all of the above. But my garden was really hard to get going this year. I have some more pole beans. I didn't realize these were pole beans. They got mixed up with the bush beans. And they are climbing this bed frame trellis that I have. Guys, you do not need expensive stuff to get your plants to grow on. Seriously, you don't need expensive stuff. Just this is from a bed frame that we decided we didn't like anymore. It wasn't cheap, but it was cheaply made. And now it's a cherry tomato trellis, and later next year it's going to be a bean trellis. So really don't need anything fancy. This is literally just PVC pipe that I've used for hanging bird houses with. I need to do more of that. And then of course some more beans and basil and that sort of stuff. Now over here, these are some beds that I recently flipped. They need to be, I need to add some more hay just to smother out some more of these weeds again. But for the most part, these are ready to go. I'm going to be planting another round of cucumbers in here. I had my beans and carrots in here. They did really well. And my peas and carrots, they did really, really well. I will be planting some more bush cucumbers and creeping, like viney cucumbers here shortly. Of course, some more vertical growing implements. I love vertical growing. You can really grow a lot in a small space by growing vertically. Okay, so I told you that I love having, some weeds or they're not bumper crops, really just buffer areas in my garden. So I have this section in between the peas, like more of my cold hardy plants, and my herbal section over here. I have this whole row of just weeds. And it's things like wild lettuce, which I also use for medicinal purposes. I have dandelion, ground ivy, wild violet, plantain, fleabane. I think there's some thistle in here. All sorts of stuff. This provides shade for my colder loving plants, or my tender plants in the afternoon, as well as with this tree. I'm utilizing the shade from all of these things to provide, a little bit of relief for these tender plants when it's really, really, really hot. Don't mind the trash. I have to go to the dump today. All right, so in the middle part of the garden, I have obviously some more weeds. I'm a great weed grower. This is lamb's quarter. This can be used medicinally. Love it. Have not harvested this yet. I'm kind of just letting it go. I want it to seed again. That way I can get more for next year and actually use it for medicinal purposes. I have some catnip down here that doesn't look like it's doing too well, so I need to check in on this. It's looking pretty sad. Definitely need to check in on that catnip today. Maybe relocate it. Some more perennial pollinator plants. Got my lettuce over here. Again, my lettuce is literally covered by tall plants, and this lettuce has been doing really well considering the heat. It's not tried to bolt or anything. I actually just harvested a whole bunch earlier this week. This is butterhead lettuce. It's kind of like a cabbage lettuce. I really like it. It's soft and buttery. But it's been doing really well here. Even though it's in the middle of the garden, it still gets lots of shade from these taller plants that are growing up. You want your plants to work with you, not against you. You want to work with your plants. It's so much easier to work with what you're growing than against it and trying to make it look picture perfect. It's not going to look picture perfect. Plants do their own thing, and that's okay. Manage the chaos. Speak to your plants. Listen to them. They're going to tell you every time what they need, what they don't need, how you can support them, and give you a good idea of where to plant things for next year. It's all about observing and really getting to know your plants. I have some more, they're called Adam's needles. I have those planted. Some milkweed that I'm hoping to add throughout here. Valerian. I like planting produce, but my passion really is in native plants, and then as well as herbs. I like using herbs for various things. I like the fact that there's a bunch of naturalized or native plants around here that I don't have to, I don't have to grow this. This grows on its own, and it's wonderful medicine. Some more beans spread out through here. This is an amaranth bed that didn't do so well, so I'm not sure what I'm going to plant there next. My borage is doing amazing. I'm very thrilled with how awesome it looks. The bees love it. Look how much they love this. They're like, yeah. I dig it. Borage again, medicinal. You can use it for all sorts of things. Really good for you. Got some more thyme, a radish here that looks like it might be ready. We'll give it about another day. Got some turmeric in here, some more dandelions, because you know, dandelions may be weeds, but they are also an herb and they are a nitrogen fixer. So leave those dandelions alone, let them do their thing. Got some more sage in here. I love sage. Sage is really easy to grow. It doesn't take a lot. You pretty much stick it in the ground and it will do what it does, and that is grow. Got some cabbages over here. These cabbages were decimated by slugs earlier this year. I'm sort of just leaving them because it seems like bugs are eating on them, and they're not eating on anything else. So if I leave these here, maybe the bugs will keep eating them and not eat anything that I'm really looking forward to having. Of course, you gotta have a wind chime in your garden to keep any bad juju away. Got some more volunteer tomato plants. Some mullein that I picked up on the side of the road and decided to try to plant in here. Some more climbing beans. Literally all this stuff is stuff that I found in our shed. This is our strawberry patch. We'll see. I did this little trick thing that I saw on social media about where people were taking strawberries that they purchased from the store, and then they were like going bad or whatever, and they put them in the dirt. I did that a couple weeks ago. Whether or not I get any strawberries, I don't know. It's been like a hit or miss with this strawberry patch between the birds, the bunnies, and then the heat. This has been a little bit of a challenge for me. So we're gonna keep trying, and if not, we're gonna move the strawberry patch. Some oregano. The oregano is starting to flower, which means I desperately need to give it a haircut soon. That way I can continue harvesting the oregano. Some more beans. Come back through here. Like, look how pretty these are. This is the flower of the wild lettuce. They're pretty. This was an absolute disaster. I'll just level with you with this. This was a horrible disaster. And that's okay. You are allowed to make mistakes when you're gardening. I had these covered. This is supposed to be like a cold frame, and then the cold frame didn't work, so then I added like cold hardy plants, and then it got too hot, and then it got too cold, and nothing was working. The wind was really bad. This is a disaster, but that's okay because we're getting what we can get out of it. I've gotten some radishes out of it, definitely gotten some lettuce out of it, done with the cut and come again method. For the most part, I've got lots of beneficial weeds. The end of the season, all of this stuff is going to be used as green mulch and then covered with hay again. Yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine. Another row of wild plants. This is chicory. Look how pretty it is. Chicory blooms in the morning, and the blooms are just, honestly, they're so pretty. But you can use the roots of chicory as a coffee substitute. We have not done that yet. I actually didn't know that this was here until it started producing flowers. I'm a big fan, so I'm going to leave this here and let it go to seed. And hopefully get some more chicory next year. This is just a disaster. All right, so that was the garden tour inside the fence, but that is not the end of my garden. I have all of this over here. I have garden stuff over here. I have it everywhere. So I'm gonna go run some errands, go get I'm picking up fertilized chicken eggs. I do have a rooster, as you can hear, but the hens haven't really taken to him yet. So none of our eggs are fertile, and they're also on strike, so they're not really doing a whole lot. But I have a broody hen, and none of her eggs are fertilized, so I'm going to go get some fertilized eggs, and hopefully she will hatch them out. When I come back, I'll show you the rest of my growing space. These are chestnut trees, the hybrid, like the Chinese American ones. And hopefully in about a year or so, I can throw these suckers in the ground and maybe we'll get some chestnut trees. All right, I'll be back. So plans changed. I went and got my fertilized eggs. The broody hen is in her brooder box. I'm getting ready to put those eggs into the brooder box with her and take out the old eggs. Hopefully she will be okay with the switcheroo, and here in a couple of weeks, well, not a couple of weeks, but 28 days, we're gonna have some baby chickens. Plans did change a little bit after I got the fertilized eggs. I was going to show you the rest of my garden space, but while I was getting my fertilized eggs, I was also propositioned to purchase a goat, in which I got permission to purchase said goat. So now we're just waiting on the communication back and forth between me and the buyer to buy said goat. But that means this whole, can't see it because it's disgusting out here, guys. But this whole building right here, that's where we're gonna put our goats when we get more, like I say plural, but we're just getting one now. So the goal is today is to go ahead and clean that out, prep it, just in case. It needs to be cleaned out anyway, because it's got a bunch of trash in it from when we first moved in, and I didn't really know where to put all of the trash. We were cleaning out the barn, and then it's got some stuff left over from the previous owners, so I just need to clean it up anyway, and that's okay. So the goal is to get this all cleaned up. I'm using my next door neighbor and in-laws Kubota today. It's going to make my job 1,000 times easier. And then we're gonna get this building prepped for maybe bringing home a dairy goat later this week. I hope so. She's awfully cute, so hopefully it all works out. All right, I'll keep you updated. Broody Bertha's pretty upset with me because I've moved her off of her nest and moved eggs in here. She's now in a brooder box, so I'm hoping she will calm her happy booty down, sit on those eggs, and then we'll be good to go. So I'm gonna leave her alone, let her do her thing. I put food and water in here. This should be more comfortable. There's also a fan blowing on the brooder box because I have baby chicks in here and I don't want them to overheat. So hopefully this will be better for everyone. She's kind of pissed off because a rooster tried to get to her, and it was drama, right? Yeah, it was drama. So we're gonna leave her alone, let her settle down, and maybe she'll sit back down on her nest soon. The workday is not complete without a kitty break. Hi, Taz. Yeah. Okay, I have the goat pen all cleaned out in anticipation for a goat or sheep. I'm hoping it's the goat though. That would be cool. Anyway, so back to our garden tour. This is technically my herb garden that I had started, and the only thing that really came back this year was the lavender that's up there, and then all of this dill. I didn't plant this dill at all. It seeded itself. I specifically plant dill just for the butterflies. Like, it's just something that I like to do. I like to support our pollinators in that way. And then I have all of this red clover that's in here. I like to keep those around. Red clover, like I've said before, is edible. It's medicinal. It's good for you. I keep it around for different recipes that I use. I also have some morning glories in here. Something's been eating the morning glories, which is honestly okay with me. I think Sadie might be the one eating the morning glories. That's probably why her poop's been runny. Should check on that. So something's been eating the morning glories, which is fine with me because it's keeping them from really taking over the rest of this bed. And then I found this trellis just on the property. It's not very sturdy, it doesn't look that great, but it's functional and it works for keeping some of the morning glories off the ground and overtaking my lavender. I have two different kinds of lavender. I planted this hybrid lavender plant this year. It hasn't sprouted or anything like that, and that's okay. I'm kind of letting it do its thing. The leaves smell really, really good. I don't know, probably should have looked this up, but I don't know if it's actually going to flower out. And if not, that's fine. I can still use the lavender or the leaves for all sorts of things. Got a little bit of mugwort going on here. Got another one of those compost bins for any chicken scraps I don't want to give to the chickens. Got some Siberian irises up here. They bloomed earlier this summer and they just look so pretty. And then of course, I harvested the lavender earlier this week, but I'm getting quite a bit of yield off of these two lavender plants. This one has definitely expanded this year. This one died off a little bit, but I think they're going to do fine for another year of coming back after it gets gross and cold and wet. I have some poke here. I do grow poke. You can eat the leaves. You can use the berries for dyeing. And then the roots are a good lymphatic drainage herb. If you're not familiar with herbs, this is not one that I would start with at all by any means. It can be tricky to cook. It can be tricky to make edible, so it's not poison. In its raw state, it's not really poison, but it's such a good lymphatic drainer that if you take too much of it, it's going to basically like dump out your system, and that can clearly cause problems. So it's one of those things where you really got to know how to work with this plant in order to use it. However, it is a great plant. I don't eat it. My grandma used to eat the leaves. It would make like a poke salad. I don't do that. Honestly, I don't trust myself with that at all. But I do dig up the roots at the end of the season, and I will use the roots as like a lymphatic drainage oil. And I'm not saying, when I got COVID a couple of years back, and I'm not saying this is not like a medical diagnosis or anything like that, but along with other medications from the doctor, I noticed that using the poke root oil, I noticed using the poke root oil really helped my stimulate lymph node drainage, which helped a lot with being able to breathe and just getting rid of some of that pressure. So something to think about. I'm happy to make an oil for you if you're interested in that. I also have some more goji berry tree bush things over here. These are doing much better than the ones that I have in my garden. Those are not doing very well. I think they get too much sunlight. These get partial sunlight. So I think that has been the difference. I have 4 plants in this bed here. And hopefully by next spring or something, we'll have some berries. All right, okay. I started to make a wattle border here, and wattle is basically just taking, let me get closer. It doesn't look good, but wattle fencing is basically taking sticks and weaving them in and out of other sticks to create like a woven border. I started working on this at the beginning of summer, and then I didn't really run out of tree limbs, but it got too hot for me to want to like cut any more trees down. So this will probably be a fall project when the grasses die back down and I can get out there and actually get to the trees that we need to cut down. Okay, we're in another section of our yard. We do have 11 acres. I think maybe 5 of that is dedicated to the home and the homestead, and then the rest of it is hay. We are part of a larger farm next door, and we share the property for hay. It works for us because we get free hay for my garden and our animals, and then it also helps with the farm income. So I do a lot in 5 acres. Really isn't a small space, but compared to doing like a commercial farm, 5 acres is, with buildings and stuff, like you're kind of running into, where do I plant these things? Fortunately, there's a lot that I didn't have to plant because the woman who owned the house before us, she was amazing, a goddess, and planted a lot of things that are super beneficial and helpful, and I am just having to go through and cultivate them and nurture them so that they can get back to the health that they had. So we have some black raspberries back there. I just trimmed, you notice I trimmed all of these trees at the beginning of the season. It was a much bigger job than I thought it was going to be. But I opened that up to get to the black raspberries. And then this tree right here is actually a cherry tree. And I was able to free that up from some of the sucker trees around. So hopefully we'll get some cherries. And then all through here is elderberry. This is American elderberry. It is native to America. It stretches all the way down there and then it goes down into the creek. So it's a pretty big, we have a pretty big elderberry grove. It's just a matter of being able to get to the berries because it's a little tricky and overgrown, and then there's some like different things that you have to kind of jump over. But it's doing well. Wonderful. All of my berries are still green. I'm waiting on them to turn a nice purple color before I start harvesting these. You know, and these are just the ones that I can reach. There's so many up there. I'll have to get like a ladder out just to get some of the taller ones. You can kind of tell that something's been eaten on them already, and that's okay. We share this land with different animals and different critters, and they're just trying to feed their families too. There's enough for all of us to share. All right, so here, my phone's starting to heat up, so hopefully we can get through this. It's hot out here today, guys. So here's this willow tree. I have named him Seamus. He's amazing. And Seamus was in really bad shape when we first moved here, but we cut down quite a few trees, got rid of an outbuilding, did some moving around. As you can see, we're not done yet. But we were able to open up some space for him, and now he's thriving. He's just doing really, really well. I have snipped some of his branches to use for like pain management, achy stuff management, and I'm hoping in the fall or whenever I can cut back some of these and do some weaving projects. So we'll see. He's doing great. Really, really proud of him. We've got some more poke in there. Typically I leave poke for whoever, the birds or whatever, because really one root can make a lot of oil. And then if you mix that with other oils in a salve, it makes quite a bit of product. And then all of this is some more elderberry that has popped up from where we have cleared it out in here. On to the next. All right, so around my porch might be where I'm having the most fun with landscaping and design. We have a fairly large house. We have plenty of areas to grow things, and I want our home to be functional and beautiful. So I'm intermingling a lot of perennial plants because, guys, honestly, perennial plants are the way to go. You don't have to buy them every year. They come back and they're beautiful and they get bigger, and you can divide them and then you get more. Perennials are really worth the money. But I also put in different herbs and things like that that can be used for medicinal purposes. My chickens got in here today and destroyed it. It doesn't normally look like this. It looks really bad right now. I don't have mulch on here yet. This is just hay that I put down. I will get some mulch for it for next season. But yeah, I gotta come back and clean that because the chickens went hog wild out here. I have some azaleas here. I've also mixed in some watermelon seeds throughout here. with the purpose of the watermelon growing out this way and then kind of smothering out some of the weeds. That way I don't have to deal with it. Some more salvia here, some rose. Got some chamomile with the St. John's wort. All of the rocks came locally. If they didn't come from this farm, they came from my parents' farm. They live less than a mile down the road. This is Ohio spiderwort, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. It could be another spiderwort, but it's a type of spiderwort. And I've just left it because it's pretty. Got some rosemary. I've had a horrible time of keeping rosemary alive, so I'm hoping that with this being some sandier soil, it'll be okay. Excuse me. Got some more St. John's wort here and some gladiolas and then some more chamomile. This is a Polish variety. It's called Zloty Lane. And it is an annual, but it self-seeds. It's a proficient self-seeder. So I'm hoping next season we will have some more of that. Then of course I have spearmint. I said earlier, if you're planning on getting involved with herbs, spearmint and what else did I say? Oregano would be like the easiest herbs to really get into. They grow really well. You don't really have to do a whole lot with them. My only advice is if you get into the mint family, anything in the mint family, you're gonna wanna put it in a container. Mint is notoriously hard to kill and it is a great spreader. So you don't want to have your mint outside of a container because it'll go everywhere and then you're basically just stuck with mint. I have this beautiful rose bush, some peonies, some marigolds that just started flowering. This sage, I've had this sage for the last 4 years. It's been transplanted twice. He's just doing great. He got a little woody on me this summer, so I had to prune him back. He was much larger. He was twice the size of this. Had to prune it back to provide some more growth to come in. I've got some perennial pollinator plants, some more oregano, some more sage, lady slipper. Everything needs to be watered. It's been a rough day. I've got a bunch of yarrow through here. Now this is red yarrow, but I've got white yarrow in there. Some people say that red yarrow doesn't have as much of a medicinal value as white yarrow. Other people say that that's bonkers. They're literally the same plant, they're just different colors. However, with them being hybridized or modified, not hybridized, modified, it can mess with, supposedly it can mess with the medicinal value. I don't know. I use the red yarrow mostly for beauty products, bath products, that kind of stuff. I still feel like it has some value in supporting mood, supporting your skincare, that sort of thing. And then I try to save the white yarrow for treating things that I would need more of like a medicinal punch too. It's all spreading out really well. I'm pretty thrilled with it. 10 out of 10. I've got some silver mound over there. I didn't know what it was when I first planted it, but I loved it and it's super soft. So I have it underneath my hammock. And when I just need to relax, I will lay on my hammock and sort of pet the bush. My little gnome guy. Did great. I need to empty him out. Alright, so I have some hydrangeas, I have some hostas, I have some creeping things, some more sage. Sage is super easy again. I have some vervain. If you ever have issues with vampires, come to me and I will get you some vervain. We have some 4 o'clock mixes, some thyme, because you literally can never have too much time, and I know that sounds funny, but you can't. I have some mugwort. The girls are ready to go in, so I'm gonna wrap this up real quick. And then all through here I have some more borage. some Shasta daisies, some more Ohio spiderwort, and then hostas all throughout here. Hostas are edible. I haven't done it, but you know, if I'm ever in dire need and starving, I guess I can come out and eat my hostas. Everything in here has a purpose. Everything in here can be used for something, and not only that, it's beautiful. So I'm gonna go let these puppies inside and talk to you guys soon. Ew. Ew.